Hello, everyone. I'm sure most of you know me from Twitter as @AlphaJack. A quick disclaimer here, I'm not a professional pilot, military or otherwise. My academic background is actually in Egyptology, but I do have a lifelong passion for military aviation that began at a really early age. This interest, which is sometimes an obsession, brought me into the world of study-level simulations, which over time has led to a fairly detailed understanding of aviation and the systems employed by various aircraft. Mick West made a claim regarding the 2004 Nimitz encounter that, as someone with an understanding of how things work, at least at an unclassified level, struck me as approaching on the impossible. What I'm going to do here is show you how, at a very basic level, his theory that Underwood caught a friendly F-18 on its flare makes little sense when armed with even an amateur's understanding of how sensors and systems correlate in a modern fighter, and especially when daddling through a whole fleet of combat systems. First, a quick and easy rundown of what you're looking at. This is an F-18C, or Charlie, simulated by Eagle Dynamics, which is widely agreed as the most accurate study-level simulation of military aircraft in the world, at least commercially. It reproduces with as much accuracy as possible in an unclassified setting the F-18C Lot 20 from the mid-2000s, so coincidentally the period we're most concerned with here. While it's not a Super Hornet as Fravor and Underwood were flying, its systems and capabilities are at the very least as competent, and many of these assets are still in use, like the flare here and the data link system. Indeed, one of the reasons pilots were so quick to transition to the Super Hornet from the Legacy Hornet was that the former was designed to be nearly identical from an operator's standpoint. The same cockpit layout, similar avionics, HOTAS, etc. Most of you will recognize at least some of what you're looking at. Up top's the HUD, or heads-up display, showing all the most immediately necessary information: speed, altitude, heading, etc. Below, you're going to notice three screens. The top two are called DDIs, or Digital Data Indicators, and the bottom one is called an MPCD, or Multi-Purpose Color Display. We're going to be highly technical here and call them screens. The pilot, or WISO, which is the Weapon System Operator, or the guy in the back, has a list of about 10 or so pages he can bring up on any one of these screens. Here, watch, I'll show you. For example, you could pull up the radar on the right, weapons loadout on the left, and a map on the bottom, or any variation of that. The guy in the back has 4 screens, and he can do all of this without even having to lift his hands from the control sticks. He has 2 of them. And this is an important point to remember. By using his or her thumb to move a little rocker switch, this is called castling, because the switch on the control sticks looks like a castle. Like I said, remember this for later. Castling, it's important. By now, we all know the story. Fravor engages this unknown object, returns to the carrier, and the next flight launches after Underwood tells Fravor, "I'm going to catch it." And he did. So let's use a simulator to demonstrate the impossibility of what he captured being a military or civilian aircraft. I've set up the cockpit here, so all 3 of the most critical pages for our discussion are on the screen. On the top left is the flare. On the top right is the radar. On the bottom is the SA page. By now everyone's probably familiar with the flare since it's been gone over in so many other videos, so I'll save time by not going into too much detail there. The radar is also equally simple to understand. It's just a top-down representation of what's in front of your aircraft with multiple different modes and changes you can make to azimuth or elevation. But it's not really important for our discussion. The SA page, however, I don't think a lot of people are aware of, and it plays a fundamental role for the pilots. SA stands for Situational Awareness. All friendly fighters are communicating with each other on what's basically a high-tech internet. If you're flying a plane and your radar sees something in front of you, it transmits that information to my plane, and I see that contact information on my SA page even if my radar is off. The same goes for ships like the Princeton or AWACS aircraft like the Hawkeye. If it sees a target, it transmits them and their identification to my aircraft, and all others on that high-tech internet. It's called a data link, or link 16 to be specific. Remember the video of the pilot freaking out about his SA?
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. My gosh.
That's what he was referencing. So just to be clear, the SA page shows you everything everyone sees on the network and the identity of what they see. Additionally, it also shows you where everyone is. Each aircraft on the network broadcasts its location and identity, so you can always see where everybody is, even without radar. It's pretty cool, eh? What's even more cool, though, is that if you're in a plane looking at someone with one of your sensors, I can see what you're looking at on my SA. This means that when Underwood attempted to lock up the target, and he did make that attempt, by prioritizing the contact, everybody on the data link could see what he was attempting to identify. Everyone is always accounted for. If the contact was a friendly F-18, as Mick West has suggested, a number of things would have occurred. 1. The pilot of the aircraft would have been spiked, setting off a warning on his radar warning receiver like this. 2. That pilot would have been calling out Buddy Spike, his altitude, and a bullseye reference. The bullseye is an arbitrary point in the battle space from which everyone references a position. So if I was flying at 20,000 feet west from the bullseye by about 40 miles, it would sound like Buddy Spike Angels 20, Bulls 270 for 40. That tells everyone on the radio that I've been locked up by a friendly aircraft, and it tells them exactly where I am. That didn't happen. 3. Everybody on the data link, meaning everyone in the air or on the ground, would have seen Underwood's plane designating a friendly aircraft on their SA or their version of it. Again, that didn't happen. In multiple interviews, Fravers explained the process by which that object was captured, and listening closely here to this process is vital. On the Fighter Pilot podcast, he claimed, as we hit it with the radar, it started to jam, it went into jam extrapolate, it didn't want to be locked up.
The radar tape actually showed, the thing, as we hit it with the radar, it started to jam, went to the jam extrapolate, and the aspect vector started spinning around because it didn't want to be locked up. And Chad saw that, that's what he had seen.
From the Joe Rogan podcast, so he picks up a hit on his radar, goes to lock it up, and immediately it starts jamming the radar. He's smart enough to castle to his targeting pod and takes a passive track.
Well, he's smart enough to castle to his targeting pod, and he takes a passive track. And that's the video that you see of the Tic Tac, where it's just sitting in the middle of the screen real quiet.
Remember I said to take note of that term castling? Here's why it's important. West has suggested that Underwood just happened to catch the unidentified craft on his FLIR. Like he was just slewing it around and happened to find something that he couldn't identify on his screen. That's not how it works.
And the way the system actually works is when you see something on the radar and you designate it as your primary target, all the other sensors will look at that point. So everything is kind of synced together.
Again, listen to what Fravor's saying about how the sensors work. When a point of interest is designated by the sensor, all sensors on the aircraft point to it. Note the FLIR in the video is in slave mode. It was slaved to the radar. This means that the FLIR was looking at the object because the radar was. Even though Underwood couldn't get a lock, that doesn't mean it can't be passively designated as a priority. This is what was done, forcing the FLIR being slaved to the radar to look at the contact. This is how Underwood captured it. Now let's put all this together. Underwood sees an unidentified contact on his radar. He immediately would have cross-referenced his SA page. He attempts to lock it up, it jams him. Again, this would have been viewable on everybody's SA page. There were no buddy spike calls. The IFF system on the F-18 did not identify it as an F-18. Nobody on the data link told him it was a friendly fighter. For the contact to be a friendly aircraft or civilian with a transponder, a catastrophic series of failures must have occurred at every single level, from the mechanical to the dozens of humans on the data link and their systems. Understanding how the correlation of sensors work in conjunction with everyone on that data link, this simply isn't possible. 1. An F-18 would have been immediately identified as friendly by the IFF system. That's without question. 2. An F-18 would have been broadcasting its position to everybody on the data link, including Underwood's. 3. An F-18 would have called out a buddy spike if locked by friendly radar. 4. An F-18 would not actively jam another F-18. 5. A civilian aircraft definitely would not actively jam an F-18. 6. The FLIR was not a lucky catch. It was slaved to the radar. 7. Everyone on the data link would have been able to see Underwood's aircraft and his prioritized target on their SA page. This includes all friendly fighters, even those on the ground, AWACS, and capable ships like the Princeton. I don't know what it was, but with a limited understanding of the systems and sensors in use, I know what it wasn't. And it wasn't a friendly military or civilian aircraft. I won't speculate on what that leaves us with, but now at least we're armed with a little more information and we can apply this to all similar videos and encounters.